I'm delighted to be the MC and for our panel discussion, which I'm looking forward to as much as you are, I'm sure. Now, building on the Scanlon Foundation's National Mapping Social Cohesion Research Series, the Foundation's Citizenship discussion paper released today, which Liz made reference to, and it's a very interesting document indeed. The discussion paper shines a light on the issue of citizenship. In particular, it looks at how citizenship is intrinsically linked to our sense of national identity, pride, and belonging. With the rise of the internet and the advent of the global citizen, and in a climate where there's growing public concern over national security, and we can touch on that, why is it so important for us to consider our role as citizens of Australia, and where should the citizenship debate go from here? It's something that I think many of us, I certainly include myself, for many years hadn't given much thought to. Growing up in Perth and moving around the country, it's not something that was high on the agenda, but it is now, and it's timely that we deal with it. Now, these are some of the questions we'll be tackling a little bit later on. Before we kick things off, though, a quick note for those wishing to tweet from the launch this evening. The official event hashtag is #OzCitizen, #OzCitizen. I now ask you to please welcome Anthea Hancock, who's Chief Executive Officer of the Scanlon Foundation. Anthea will provide a brief introduction to the inaugural Thought Leadership piece. Anthea Hancock.
Good evening. Thank you, Peter, very much. On behalf of the Scanlon Foundation, thank you, all of you, for joining with us tonight for the launch of our discussion paper on citizenship, and I would particularly like to thank the Office of Multicultural Interests for hosting us. I am particularly delighted that Western Australia is taking such a leading role in starting this conversation, and I really look forward to your questions and engagement with the panel later on tonight. I would also like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting tonight and pay my respects to their elders past and present and those here with us tonight. Thank you, Barry. I would also like to acknowledge the very distinguished guests here with us this evening that have already been mentioned, so thank you very much. Since 2007, the Scanlon Foundation has supported Australia's largest study monitoring the nation's attitudes on issues influencing our community cohesion. The Mapping Social Cohesion Research Series is undertaken in collaboration with Monash University, and in particular Professor Marcus, and in partnership with the Australian Multicultural Foundation, represented tonight by the exceptional Dr. Hus Dalal. And we are proud to say that this research is the largest of its kind. Over 8 years, the research has captured the views of more than 24,000 people on topics from immigration, multiculturalism, and trusting government to discrimination and belonging. It provides a solid foundation for analysis of key issues affecting our nation at government, business and community levels. From this comprehensive research series, we know that overall Australia remains a highly cohesive society by international standards. Yet challenges in maintaining this and a successful immigration program remain. According to the Scanlon Monash Index, there are 5 core indicators of social cohesion. These are belonging, worth, social justice, participation, and acceptance and rejection. The idea of citizenship is inextricably linked to these themes. The discussion paper we are launching here tonight aims to explore the concept of citizenship and how it is changing. As a point of clarification, we believe that a citizen is simply a member of a community, and as such, we would suggest that the discussion of citizenship should be about more than a legal designation. It is a cultural ideal which carries moral meanings, values, and expectations, all of which are informed by social, historic, and cultural contexts. In particular, we are hoping to prompt consideration of the notion of being a citizen in a real or lived sense. Citizenship is much more than just a legal, formal status. It is just as much about behaviour and identity. This discussion paper explores how relationships, economic, social, political, and personal, are being transformed by influences like social media and online connectivity, which challenges all traditional notions of how citizens engage in the public sphere. And it looks at the rise of the global citizen. It asks if these influences threaten our way of life, or do they enrich them, or both? What could citizenship possibly mean when the frame of reference is the world? In launching this paper, we hope to draw attention to some of the key factors that impact our understanding of what it means to be a citizen in our communities. But more importantly, we hope to promote the type of informed, robust discussion that will shape future programs and legislation that can strengthen our understanding of citizenship and its role in maintaining and growing a positive future for our country. To understand the changing role of citizenship in Australia today, it is useful to first look back. It wasn't until the Nationality and Citizenship Act of 1948 was introduced on Australia Day in 1949 that people born in Australia first gained legal status as Australian citizens. Before that, of course, Australians were British citizens. But these developments were not the only means by which those living in Australia before and after 1949 felt Australian or felt a sense of mateship and caring for their neighbours and friends. In 1993, the Citizenship Act was changed to recognise Australian citizenship as a common bond uniting all Australians, involving reciprocal rights and obligations. And in the same year, a pledge of commitment was introduced to ensure that those taking our Australian citizenship were clearly making a declaration to be part of the Australian nation and its people. In 2002, Australian Citizenship Day was introduced, and the following year, dual citizenship was established. We recognised the need and value of connections to birth countries. In 2007, under the Howard government, a citizenship test was introduced to ensure that applicants had a basic knowledge of the English language and an appreciation of Australian history, to emphasise expectations of engagement and participation in civic life. More recently, the Abbott government introduced legislation in June of this year to potentially revoke Australian citizenship of dual citizens who join in or aid declared terrorist organisations, and to further underscore expectations of loyalty and duty to the country. Just as legislation has changed significantly over the last 50 years, so too has the world we live in. Commentators are speaking of changing norms of citizenship as a result of changing global dynamics and influences. Most relevant here is a move from duty-based citizenship to engaged citizenship, characterised by a more direct approach to political participation and increasing tolerance and concern for others globally as well as locally. In this age of connection and movement, where distance is not a barrier to instantaneous communication, we're more connected to the rest of the world than ever. International travel is more accessible, borders are becoming harder to manage and possibly less relevant, and at the same time, digital technologies have spawned a second industrial revolution. And with these environmental changes come complex challenges for societies such as Australia's. Unlike before, it's possible for new arrivals to be here, but not really here. In the digital age, immigrant settlers can more easily maintain real-time connections to the social, cultural and political developments in their country of origin. This was not possible 30 years ago, and this shift is significant. For some, though, they fear this shift to new forms of connectedness come at the cost of full involvement in Australian society, lessening capacity or interest to engage in current issues and debates, issues that could affect their lives and the lives of people around them. Commerce has also been affected. With much higher flows of capital between societies now possible, the internet encourages the internationalisation of commercial transactions, not just between businesses, but also for consumers and between families, as we read recently that money transfers from workers abroad to family back home has tripled in a decade and are now 3 times larger than all global aid budgets. As networks change, there is then the potential for people's relationships to their country of residence to also change. If belonging was one of the core indicators of social cohesion, then with all this in mind, what could belonging come to mean? And what impact might it have on the value and practice of citizenship in Australia? A changing world, combined with a climate where many Australians perceive an increased threat to national security, means it's an opportune time for us to reflect on the importance of each of us being an engaged and caring citizen, and the role this plays in helping to maintain and foster social cohesion. So what does this mean for our sense of belonging? The Scanlon Foundation surveys and other research over the past 30 years have consistently found that the majority of Australians have a high level of identification with this country. According to the 2014 Mapping Social Cohesion report, 92% of Australians express a sense of belonging. 88% indicate pride in the Australian way of life, and 91% believe that maintaining the Australian way of life is important. These factors are integral to social cohesion. However, in the last 3 years, there's been a marked shift in the proportion indicating that they have a sense of belonging to a great extent, down from 77% to 66% in 2014, a 10-point drop. This shift could be explained by a number of factors. The rise of the global citizen could be one of those factors. With multiple identities and connections to all parts of the world, belonging is becoming potentially more ambiguous. Whether you were born here or overseas, whether your family arrived yesterday or decades ago, or has always been here. Interestingly, as Australians' sense of belonging has decreased, we've seen an increase in the reported experience of discrimination because of skin colour, ethnic origin, or religion. We've also seen an increased level of dissatisfaction with government. These factors will clearly influence our sense of belonging. It seems the role of citizenship also has an impact on our sense of belonging. In analysing all Scanlon Foundation surveys over the last 8 years, findings suggest that being recognised officially as a citizen has a positive effect on an individual's sense of belonging in Australia. Of Australians aged 25 to 44 who were born overseas, 56% of those who had become Australian citizens said they belonged to a great extent, compared to only 32% of those who were not citizens. Clearly, the legal process is very important. I would like, though, to outline what I see as two forms of citizenship. While the act of undertaking Australian citizenship is an important and symbolic way of validating one's personal identification with Australia, it is certainly not the be-all and end-all of ensuring one is, or will be, a good citizen. And being born in Australia does not exempt one from these same obligations and responsibilities. I'd like to introduce the idea of big C citizenship and small c citizenship. In other words, official citizenship status compared to a more moral or values-based concept of citizenship, as in the responsibilities of Australians to each other, their communities, and to their country. For new citizens, being part of being a good citizen is having a willingness and desire to understand the host country's history and culture, its customs, and how its legal and political systems work. This may involve taking our big C official citizenship, where it is clear they are making a very personal commitment to upholding our values and ensuring this is a welcoming and caring society. For those born in Australia, they have a small c citizenship obligation, a responsibility to be a good citizen and to recognise the personal impact through their behaviours on the realisation of our values. In addition, though, it is also about acknowledging the rise of global citizenship and respecting the rights of our new citizens, particularly when it comes to retaining home country connections and traditions, just as they would want to be respected if they were living overseas. And so, if we wish to foster greater social cohesion, it is arguably more important to ensure that everyone, including both Australian-born and overseas-born citizens, understand and respect their individual rights and obligations to be good citizens, rather than focus on the official citizenship status. But this kind of engagement and respect depends on knowledge and awareness, and that's why, as a growing multicultural and diverse society, we need to open a dialogue about what it means to be a good citizen. As a country, we need to ask ourselves what more could we be doing to facilitate conversations about citizenship. our community, and our societal expectations. Alarmingly, as recently as 2004, civics and citizenship was not a key learning area in any state or territory education system. Then, in 2009, education ministers agreed that civics should be taught in schools to strengthen understanding of the obligations and benefits of citizenship. But progress since then has been slow. In mid-2015, a national civics and citizenship curriculum for years 3 to 10 students, drafted 4 years earlier in 2011, was still awaiting endorsement by education ministers. The subject is taught in some states, but the results are uneven. And this is only related to those attending school and not the broader community. Building citizenship into our education system is a good start, but there is more that can be done. As a society, our goal must be to strengthen our communities, encourage respect for each other, actively build trust and resilience in our people, and appreciate and learn from each other's cultural frames of reference. Our local, state and federal governments and all Australians need to be asking, what are the best ways in which Australians can extend knowledge and awareness of civic competence, especially among our young people, and how can Australians across all parts of society be encouraged to find their voice? A caring, welcoming society fosters and encourages leaders across a broad range of activities, not just in politics, but in the corporate, social, sporting and media worlds as well. Through events such as this, we hope to inspire more discussion on these issues and for more of our citizens to find a voice. I look forward to continuing this discussion with you on our panel tonight. Thank you.
Can you stay with us on the stage? Yep. Thanks very much, Anthea, and Anthea is going to stay on the stage and be joined by other panellists in a minute. Now, Anthea, you mentioned a key aim of the discussion paper is to generate thoughtful debate and action. So that's what we're on about this evening, and that's what we're about to engage in. So to get that discussion going, I'd now like to introduce our panellists, and you've already met Anthea and heard her views, and there's some of the views from the Foundation's report that we can bounce off this evening. Joining Anthea on the stage, if you'd please come up as I call your name, the Executive Director of the Australian Multicultural Foundation, Dr. Has Dalal. The Fellow of the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia, Professor Andrew Marcus from Monash University. Comedian and writer Sami Shah. Sami. Associate Professor at Curtin University's Department of Social Science and International Studies, Dr. Anne Alley. And our former Governor and former Distinguished State Public Servant, Dr. Ken Michael. And thanks very much to all our panel for making their time available to be with us this evening. And I'm sure you want to hear their views, so I'll push on. But during the panel discussion, I'll throw some questions to the panel. Then we have some questions that have actually been forwarded in addition, and then we want to get to the floor. So the idea is to try and move around, get as many people as possible, have a chance to put their questions to the panel, and the panel to answer the questions concisely and sort of to the point. And if more than one or two of other panellists want to chip in, of course, that's fine. But the idea is to try and keep the agenda moving. Now, let's get things underway. And if questions come up in your mind, by the way, as we go through, please make a note of them. And when I throw it to the floor, away you go. And you'll be surprised how quickly time flies. First question tonight. What does citizenship mean to you? What does it mean to us, but to the panel? What does it mean to you? And why is it so important for us to consider our roles, rights and responsibilities as Australian citizens? If I just get a brief comment along the panel, from a brief comment from every panellist. What does citizenship mean to you? Why is it important to consider our roles, rights and responsibilities as Australian citizens? Ken Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, citizenship to me is very much about a sense of belonging. I consider myself to be a very proud Australian. My parents are Greek, they were migrants, and I've had all the privileges of being in this wonderful country of ours. And it's not only about a sense of belonging, but it's a sense of social cohesion, as we've heard. It's a sense of telling the stories about what it means to be an Australian, what it means to be a good citizen, how important it is to be part of that total family, what sort of principles that we will follow and what values will we live by. How will we bring it all together so that we can actually continue to be part of this wonderful country as a good citizen, not only caring for others, but also for respecting them and also for promoting the very importance of being part of this country and of also having strong relationships with others. We have a strong identity and we should respect it and we should be proud of it.
Sammy.
Along with not being the only person on this panel who didn't go past his bachelor's degree, I'm also probably the only non-citizen on the panel. I'm a permanent resident right now. I'm aspiring towards citizenship. So for me, citizenship is actually tied in that the big C and the small c are very, very intertwined. It's a legal thing as well as an aspirational thing. I am a citizen of Pakistan, for example. That's where I come from. And that's something that has never sat easily with me because of certain things that Pakistani citizenship requires of me. Similarly, I'm now hoping to be a citizen of Australia, but and that's not been the clear-cut, rah rah rah, yay, Australian attitude that I suppose maybe Australian Immigration Department would want from me. It was something where, as time goes on, as especially under, and not to make this political, but under the current government, Australian citizenship seems to be a far more loaded thing than I had initially understood it to be or had hoped it would be. So right now, what does citizenship mean to me? I'm not sure because it's more than I had anticipated, but it's not enough that I've been able to grapple with so far.
Anthea.
I think citizenship, I've had a problem with that all day.
It's very early in the evening too.
It's actually understanding that everybody has a responsibility to make a contribution to their community and a positive contribution. So it really is finding that pathway of how you can make that contribution and acting on it.
Anne?
For me, I guess it's really embodied in what you were saying earlier about the big C and the little c. There's that kind of formal citizenship which is given to you, and that kind of tells you in a way that this is a place that you can fit in, this is a place where you can be who you are, this is a place that accepts you as part of a community. But that smaller c, I think, is what really matters, because for me, being a citizen of Australia means that I kind of pay that forward. And that I have a responsibility to ensure that those rights that are enshrined in that formal citizenship are rights that not only I enjoy, but that everybody in the community enjoys as well. So for me, being a citizen of Australia is really taking that responsibility of the formal citizenship, and taking that seriously, taking the responsibility that formal citizenship gives to us, and ensuring that everybody has an opportunity to partake in the social, political, economic life of Australia. Not just me, but everybody.
Andrew.
The conceptual approach that Anthea indicated, capital C, small c, I think is a very useful way of framing our discussion. I would make the point that I wouldn't downplay the significance of the formal citizenship. The formal citizenship is very important. It's very important for immigrants because without that, you're not a full member of the society. And we can clearly see that there are groups who come to Australia but do not actually qualify for formal citizenship. For example, people who come from New Zealand, and there are a very large number of people who come from New Zealand who can in effect gain permanent residence in Australia but are denied the full benefits of formal citizenship. Just a little thing like not being able, and it's not a little thing, not being able to vote, which in a way is a cornerstone of how this nation operates. One of the distinguishing characteristics of Australia is that people have to vote. Overseas, you will get elections where 40% or less actually participate in an election. So not being able to vote, I think, is very important. Why is it important in that small c sense? Because if you don't feel that you belong, if you find obstacles to belonging, it undermines the cohesiveness of a society. So it's not only about your journey, but it's about a multiplicity of journeys which do not move in the direction of a cohesive society.
Has.
Thank you.
Last word.
Last word. Brief. Look, I get a bit concerned when we start to put big C's and little c's. I think, there's dangers of diluting what it actually means in terms of a whole society. And I can understand there are challenges that we need to meet, but, I think it's something that, in the term of the formal sense of citizenship, that we have, it's something that's evolved, it continues to evolve, the evolving values of democracy, and it's also, yes, a sense of belonging, but it's also multi-layered. And I think it's shaped by our birth countries, but also our home states, our hometowns, our religions, our languages, our footy teams, our families and our friends, and our local community. And I think what one should be striving for, because we live in such a celebrated democracy, one that is so culturally diverse, something that should be so unique in the world, that encompasses the formal sense of citizenship, but also looking at those the new directions, or the new phenomenon of global citizenship. And I think looking at global citizenship will start to satisfy some of those needs of the small c.